This is Life in a Nutshell. I'm Lon Schiffbauer. Take a moment and think about a goal that you had set sometime in the past but were unable to accomplish. We're talking like a New Year's resolution or a life ambition or just something you set before you, but for some reason things never really came together. Now think about the reasons that you were unable to accomplish this goal. If you're anything like me, you're thinking of things like, well, I didn't have the time, or life got in the way, or I just lost interest, motivation, or maybe even willpower. When we think things like this, it's really easy to get down on ourselves, like we're weak or didn't have it in us in the first place. But that's not necessarily the case. In fact, odds are you're not weak at all. You're simply undervaluing yourself. To better understand what I mean by undervaluing yourself, we need to talk economics for a moment. Bear with me, this will make sense. So the law of supply and demand says that when supply is really low, but demand is high, prices are going to go up. It makes sense. There's not many of whatever it is we want out there, and there's a lot of people who want it, so we're going to pay for it. Now, we understand this. This is nothing new, the law of supply and demand. However, what we failed to do is apply this very simple principle to our own finite, limited supply resources. So what do I mean? I mean things like our time, our energy, and our cognitive resources. These things are very, very finite. We only have so much of them. And furthermore, the demand on them is very high. And so why do we practically give it away for very little return on this investment? Let's first look at time. And you understand time. There's 24 hours in a day and 365 days in a year. We get this. However, every moment of every day, you need to decide how best to allocate your time, this very, very finite resource. But here's the thing. If you don't deliberately, methodically make decisions around how to invest your time, other people will simply take it. They'll just take it. Because why invest my own time in reaching a goal when I can take your time to reach that goal? So we really need to be aware of how we are investing our time and where we're just kind of tossing it out there for other people to take. The second finite resource that I want us to think about is physical energy. And yeah, this is lifting, heaving, doing all the physical manual labor, if you will. But it's more than just manual labor. The mere act of existing requires energy. And so anything that we do, anything to which we apply ourselves requires energy. And we only have so much energy in the day before we're like, I'm done. I'm out. The third is what's called cognitive resources. Now, cognitive resources, think of it kind of as mental energy or mental stamina. So things like self-control, motivation, willpower, focus, the ability to concentrate, make deliberate, good decisions. These things are all part of our cognitive resources, or rather draw upon our cognitive resources. And here's the thing, you only have so much each day, right? This is why if you're doing like a diet or something, your willpower in the beginning of the day is really strong. Middle of the day, wanes a little bit. And by the late afternoon, you're like eating everything in sight. You have less control. You have less patience with others. You have less ability to apply yourself to a task later in the day because you've depleted your cognitive resources. So these are the three types of resources that we have each day to apply to accomplishing whatever it is that we need or want to do that day. But what we now need to think about is the demand upon these resources, right? We don't get to just choose where we allocate them. In some cases, the demand is pretty absolute. Let me show you what I mean. First, we have our physiological needs. We need to eat, sleep, rest, take care of ourselves, shower, hygiene, that sort of thing, right? And so we need to invest time, energy, and cognitive resources just to meet our physiological needs. And remember, time is a limited resource. We're probably spending 10 to 12 hours a day alone just meeting our physiological needs. So right away, our day is cut in half. So after physiological needs, we have our obligations. Obligations are things that we have a moral and ethical, and in some cases legal obligation to uphold. So, for example, as a parent, I have an obligation to look after the health and welfare and education of my children. That's a moral, ethical, and legal responsibility, obligation that I have. As employees, we have obligations to uphold our side of the employment contract. And so you really can't get out of your obligations, much like you can't get out of your physiological needs. These things are going to place a demand on our time, energy, and cognitive resources, yet again, leaving us with very little with which to work for our own goals. In addition to physiological needs and obligations, we have our commitments. These are activities and communities and things that we've kind of committed ourselves to. So this might involve community work or spending time with the family or religious services, things like this. We have pretty much committed a certain portion of our time, energy, and cognitive resources to these causes. And while they are voluntary per se, right, somewhat optional, depending on the level to which we've committed to them, they might even start to feel like obligations. The point is, this leaves us yet even less time, energy, and cognitive resources to ourselves. So really, what this means is when we set a goal and fail to reach it and then berate ourselves with, self-talk like, oh, I didn't have the time and I didn't have the willpower and I just didn't have the motivation and stick-to-itiveness, what we're really saying is with the very little time, energy, and cognitive resources we had left at the end of meeting all of our physiological needs, obligations, and commitments, we kind of fell down. Well, that's because we're undervaluing it. Think about it. You have very little of these resources left at the end of the day. You need to make them heinously expensive for other people to take away. Because here's the truth of it. If we don't value and prioritize our resources for our own needs, then other people are going to prioritize them for themselves and basically rob us of a very, very, very valuable set of resources. So think about this the next time you start to get down on yourself. Think about, how can I better allocate these precious finite resources to apply to a goal that I have in mind? And what are you willing to give up? Are you willing to give up some TV time, some game time, some who knows what time? After all, it's finite. We're all given a certain amount each day. Those who accomplish their goals are those who prioritize their finite resources for their own objectives. And those who don't prioritize their goals, they're basically giving their time and resources away to other people for very little return. You don't want to do that. So there you are. I hope you found some of this helpful, maybe thought-provoking. If you did, I hope you'll consider subscribing to this podcast. Also, please tell your friends and family about this. After all, you want to support them in their endeavors, just as in you want their support in your own. So key them in on this and let's enjoy this journey together. All right? And until we talk again, have a fantastic day.